We are going to start with a downtown public safety update. And I believe the chief, or who is going to be our first speaker?
Mayor, actually, it's Bill King with the Downtown Raleigh Alliance is going to kick us off with an overview of kind of the current state of affairs downtown, and then we'll hear from Chief Patterson about efforts, and then we will hear from our Department of Transportation in that order.
In this setup, that thank you for going over that. Is there any time allotted for? We have a lot of residents here to speak.
We always allow for public comment.
So there will be
committee.
time.
So I'm going to we'll do it in a way, like based on after all the presentations, get a show of hands who's here to speak on this, who's like, I know a group of restaurant owners are here.
Cool.
I see residents here, I see Glenwood South here, so we'll try and see what time we have left, and then work on the allocation.
Okay.
Okay? Thank you, Bill, if you start.
Okay, good afternoon. Bill King with the Downtown Raleigh Alliance. I'm just going to give you a quick overview of some of the challenges we've seen and some of the initiatives from our perspective and go from there. So I'll start with this slide. This came from our annual survey. We had over 1,000 responses. A lot of residents responded. The number one issue that they wanted to see have the most attention in downtown in the next 2 years was public safety. So you can see that was the top concern. And so that's something that we've taken very seriously and put a lot of thought and energy into our initiatives as well as working with the city on. So where are some of the challenges from a safety perspective? I think certainly you've seen the Go Raleigh station and the immediate surrounding blocks. We've had a lot of concerns both in and around the Go Raleigh station with various safety concerns there. Portions of Fayetteville Street, portions of Davie Street, certainly Glenwood South on weekend nights. And obviously there have been some high-profile crimes at places like Taz's in the Transit Center and in Glenwood South, which has raised the profile of this issue. Some of the behavior we see, harassment, aggressive panhandling, juvenile misbehavior in really large groups, vandalism, drug deals, and solicitation. So that's some of what we're seeing in terms of particularly problematic behavior. Just a few quotes from various business owners, harassing their guests coming in and out of the restaurant, getting threatened when in a business near the bus station, mentioning how it's strongly impacting their business, no longer being able to have a water dispenser out for customers, seeing drug use, drug dealing, aggressive panhandling, grab-and-go theft, and behavior attempting and succeeding to intimidate. I do want to take a moment here, though, to clarify a little bit about, there's a lot of different populations here, and I want to be thoughtful about not sweeping this all into one generalization. I think sometimes you can hear people complain about the homeless or something like that. This is not that. There are overlapping populations in downtown who I think sometimes get conflated with each other. We certainly have a serious challenge with unhoused and homeless in our downtown, reflective of housing shortages in the city, shelter capacity, a really challenging network of services and access to those, and they may have some additional issues. But I want to be clear, by far, not all unhoused or homeless are challenges in this space, right? There are plenty of them who are just in downtown because they have nowhere else to be and they're struggling, right? So I want to be very clear about that. This is not meant to be a target of them, and our efforts are meant to help those in need. Then you have those experiencing mental illness and crisis. Again, experiencing a lack of service, sometimes access to services, challenging employment history. Some may be resistant to help. Some may also be experiencing joblessness or homelessness. So obviously there's some overlap there, right? But there are some people who don't necessarily overlap, but those are not always the same thing. And then we have criminal behavior. So we have some people coming into downtown engaging in this who are neither homeless nor in mental crisis. They're just engaging in problematic behavior. Now, some of them may fall into those first two groups, but plenty of them do not. And that's really been the focus of our efforts, is this third group here in terms of focusing on criminal activity. But I'll show you a couple of other initiatives working with those other groups as well. So what happens when you have these behaviors around aggressive harassment and things like that? You really have a perception of safety issues that leads to a poor visitor experience, a lower likelihood of visiting or returning, decreased sales and leasing, and can affect residents in nearby buildings and surrounding neighborhoods. It generates a fatigue for our business owners and staff, and it really hinders hiring and business recovery. Issues, particularly in the transit center, hurt transit ridership and future transit investment, which we're making a tremendous amount of investment in. But if the system feels unsafe, that affects the entire city. And it affects the perception of a downtown that is largely very safe, but has these problem spots. A few of the areas that we've been working in, we do have our ambassador program. And so I'll talk about that for a second. And then obviously we're talking today about some of these safety enhancements as well as social support services. So embedded in our ambassador program, we have 2 social workers. We've had that for 3 years. We added the second worker last year with the support of City Council, which we really appreciate. And so we've worked really hard to make sure that, again, we're trying to address all these different groups, not just focus on one group. So our social services outreach really works on helping those unhoused, those in need, those in mental crisis find services. We work closely with the ACORN unit on that and have a close partnership with the city and a lot of our service organizations. So with regards to our ambassador program, we looked at our program to make changes as well. So we saw that there have been heightened concerns in certain parts of downtown. We've added new staff. I mentioned we have 2 social workers on staff. We also purchased some electric vehicles for faster deployment, so you can see those in the photo. So what that does is that allows us to get to places much quicker. It allows us to get through the decks faster. Also remember, we cover Glenwood South all the way through to the core of downtown, so it's a lot of space to cover. So we've been able to speed up our patrols. We adjusted our hours to really focus on the key times when we were getting the most calls to make sure we have more people in those areas. We also adjusted our routes for that, and we even changed the uniforms and signage to increase awareness. This is just an example of some of the routes that we've added. These are in the core, so the route on the left will have an ambassador walking during the day, and then the route on the right, another ambassador is doing. So you have ambassadors going sort of in, sort of similar paths that make it so that you can always see an ambassador in the core of downtown. Project Reach Out is a good example of something we're doing on the social service side, which is our services fair at Moore Square. We do this 2 or 3 times a year. Our most recent one was in June. We had over 25 social service vendors. It's the idea of bringing services directly to the people in need. So again, not just focusing on criminal activity, but also focusing on social service support. Some of the research we did earlier this year on what are other communities, other downtowns doing in the safety space. We talked to a lot of other downtowns across the country and across the South to see what are you dealing with, because the reality is this is not just a Raleigh issue. We're actually seeing this across the country. So what are some other cities doing? Certainly adding additional police resources in their downtowns, security cameras and camera networks, increasing the use of mobile fleet. So you see that for both us and Raleigh Police Department. Some use off-duty police. Some have added private security patrols. Some have really focused on coordination among support services, laws and ordinances for quality of life, shared radio system, giving businesses cameras, apps, and social workers for outreach. So obviously you can see we're doing some of this already, and Raleigh is doing some of this already, but these are some of the initiatives we found around the country. A few lessons learned from other cities. Camera networks can certainly be used as a force multiplier. So we're seeing more of that. Some cities do use private security firms to focus on hotspots that are uncomfortable, can provide a more visible, safety-looking presence and a narrower focus than our ambassadors who also do hospitality. There's a range of how they look, how they're equipped, and so a lot of cities have different ways of doing that. Certainly we saw cities adding police presence in key areas, but a big lesson learned was social services and law enforcement are both needed. These type of issues can't rely on one or the other. You got to have both of those things working together. So the support needed, certainly more police officers and security and hotspots in downtown. I do think for the transit center, transit police and security to handle that long term is important. We want to have a safe system. We want to have a good experience for our riders. Obviously, we could say this all day, but certainly more social service support, particularly on supportive housing and shelters. A lot of times we have folks who need places to go. Improvements in our camera networks and camera system, investment and coordination and lighting in key areas, which I know you guys focused on last week at your work session, as well as continued commitment to maintain the public realm. Landscaping, lights, tree wells, trash cans, all that adds up. When downtown looks rough, it just contributes to the issue. So you think about Wilmington Street, which has not looked very good the last few years. That's an example of where improving that public realm does not solve all these problems, but it can certainly help as well as cleaning. And so why does this matter to the entire city? It affects the perception and experience in parts of downtown, which serves as the face of our city for many visitors and a central gathering place for residents. It's affecting the business climate for storefronts and office tenants. It can negatively impact transit ridership, which impacts the entire city and future transit. And it creates negative spillover effects in nearby areas and residents, affecting quality of life. We certainly see that around the Glenwood South area. So those are just a few thoughts just to sort of frame some of the challenges we're seeing. I'll be here throughout the session, so happy to answer any questions as needed. Thank you.
Bill, before you go, let me just ask, does anybody have a question for Bill?
I have a couple. Thanks, Bill, for the presentation. One, I'm not sure everyone understands the structure and function of DRA. Can you kind of give the public a primer on what your funding source is and all of that? And then my second question, I'll just give you both my questions and you can take them both in turn. My second question was around the shared radio networks that you had up on a slide from another municipality. It said between property owners, so I'm curious, what are they talking about?
Great questions. So I'll start with the first one. So Downtown Raleigh Alliance is a nonprofit. We were founded in 1996, originally around clean and safe. We are also your primary municipal service district provider. So the downtown area has an additional property tax on it, as does the Hillsborough Street area. And this is very common in downtowns across the country. So you all assess that tax and then you award that for certain services. So the services we provide are the safety ambassadors, events, marketing, economic development, as well as consensus building is in the contract. And then we also do a lot of events. We do a lot of things to bring people back downtown. And then we do a lot of research, economic development, things like that. And then you all engage us on policy issues around everything from sip and stroll to obviously safety, things like that, to try to do some of that community engagement and data. With regards to the radio network, so really where we saw that function was among really the security teams at properties, and it's used as sort of an emergency function of, hey, we just had somebody run into the lobby and break something, they look like this, be on the lookout. It's that type of thing. So it's primarily used by security teams across properties.
Councilmember Fort.
Thank you. Hey, Bill. I know you were here last week when they were talking about the transit center adding cameras and more functions, but you, in your presentation, indicated that we needed more cameras throughout the district. Do you have an idea in terms of like how many, like a number or anything along those lines?
I don't have a number. I think that if you look at the Raleigh police data for downtown, it is interesting. The challenges are really clustered in a couple of spots. And you look at it, a lot of calls weekend nights in Glenwood South, up and down Glenwood Avenue. A lot of calls immediately around the transit center and sort of those hot spots identified, Davie Street, portions of Fayetteville Street. So if I were focusing resources in terms of camera, I would focus them on that. We did kind of an informal audit of just Fayetteville Street. Talked to property owners, said who has cameras pointing at what. There were quite a few, but there are still gaps even on our main street. And there are still gaps around the transit center where there are portions of that, particularly perimeter, which do not have anything on them. And so, I would focus resources on those areas because that's where we get the most calls. So that's probably where you'll see the most impact.
Councilmember Jones.
Thank you so much. I have two questions. The first one, you mentioned the social service fair that you do twice a year. Can you tell me how much that costs and how, if we can do it more regularly than twice a year?
It doesn't have there's not a whole lot of cost in it in terms of hard costs. Most of it's just in our staff time. I do know that the Acorns unit, I believe, does a similar fair also a couple of times a year. And I'm looking at Evan. I'm not sure I believe I'm correct around that. So between the two of us, I think we're doing about 4 fairs a year. But it's something that we find effective, and it really does bring the social services there. So it's something that we're happy to continue to do, and if there's opportunity to increase it, we're happy to do that as well.
Awesome. And then my second question, and it speaks to something we spoke about at the last work session. You mentioned cleaning, the support needed is cleaning enhanced near the transit center. And during our work session, we talked about how there are biohazard waste that's picked up and everything. Do you, as a DRA, think that we need more public restrooms?
That's a good question. I think certainly the public restrooms we have, it is important to be able to have those accessible and open as much as possible. So you've got public restrooms at the transit center and at Moore Square. And keeping those open is really important. I know that's a challenge. I know that's hard to staff, and I know that there's issues with that, but certainly closing those does not help with the biohazard issues. So I do think it's important to keep those open. We have not looked hard at other public restroom or solutions. I know that other cities are doing that, in Portland and places like that. I think it's certainly worth considering. But at the very least, keeping the ones we have open, I think, is really important because otherwise that issue is impossible to solve.
All right. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Next is our chief.
Good morning, Mayor, Council, and staff. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank you for allowing me to be here today to provide an update that continues to be on top of mind for everyone, and that is our public safety in the downtown. Before jumping in, though, I'd like to introduce members of my team who are here with me today. They have been instrumental in the plans that we have put together and the work that we are doing along the corridor. I have my Chief of Staff, Amanda Roll, that's here with me. Also to Major Derek Ford. He's over the Southeast, Southwest, and Downtown districts. I have Lieutenant Renee Lockhart, who's over our Acorns unit. as well as Lieutenant Pete Manukas, who's over our hospitality unit, and Lieutenant Pete Morrison, that is over our transit unit. And Lieutenant Borneo is with us as well. He's my public information officer. So I will begin this morning with sharing with you our past, present, and future plans as it pertains to downtown safety. Let me begin with our past, where we have been. As you are well aware, I transitioned into this role in August of 2021 while we were still navigating the pandemic, trying to figure out how we were going to move forward as a city. And although the nightlife in Glenwood South was not fully returned, we were beginning to see sporadic increases with people coming out. On September 14, 2021, the SVHC committee briefed then the council during a work session on the current state of affairs in Glenwood South. In that briefing, we talked about a couple things. One was the intent to have more officers in the Glenwood South area. Also, too, that we were going to be enforcing more of the HDEP provisions. And we started that with an education campaign. We sent out letters to all the businesses, and then we went and spoke to each one individually so that they would understand the AEP and also the HDEP. From there, in late September 2021, is when we implemented our staffing plan, where we increased the number of officers on Friday and Saturday nights along Glenwood South, and I was providing a report to the manager's office concerning our efforts there. And what we were experiencing at that time was just mainly the noise complaints from the residents in the surrounding areas. Subsequent to that, we then issued several AEP violations to some of the nightclub establishments that were violating the AEP. And then in April, on April 5th of 2022, I came before you to talk about, or before council to talk about the state of Glenwood South as we were seeing at that time. And it was post-COVID, and in that briefing, I talked extensively about my desire to have vibrancy over catastrophe. But we were starting to see the uptick in crime and violent crime at that time. And then on March 14th of this year, Captain Wood, he is not with us today, he is out of town, but he and other members of his team briefed you during your work session about the challenges that we were continuing to see in Glenwood South. Also, too, he talked about the increase in activity and individuals in the business core, which was largely due, of course, to an influx of unhoused and transient populations that were coming into the area, which Bill spoke about. And we noted then also in that meeting that the downtown business core was starting, yes, to see a lot more activity, but there was the transit mall where it was mostly centered at. In November of last year, the downtown task force was formed, composed of City of Raleigh departments and the DRA, and that's headed by Assistant City Manager Evan Raleigh. Now, just in case you're not aware, I just wanted to give you some background on some of the efforts that have been ongoing in the business core since last year. We had Operation Rush Hour. That's where we had additional officers in the downtown area. We began that in October of 2022, Monday through Friday, in the morning time from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m., and then also in the afternoon from 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. We were experiencing a lot of aggressive panhandling, and so we had an extra presence of officers in the downtown area to try to disturb and try to disrupt that. Also, too, we had Operation Summer School. We kicked that off this year from June 15th to August 18th. We had our presence of our SROs, our school resource officers, in the downtown area, Wilmington Street, Fayetteville Street, at the transit center to try to intercept our juveniles that were getting into trouble. Additionally, we had our Acorns Connects Downtown event, which Bill spoke about. That is a resource fair that we do once a year, where we bring all services to those who are needing them. This year, we had a great time just last month. I think I saw some of y'all out there doing the electric slide while we were there. And we also, too, one other event is that we partnered with the Church of Woods for food distribution. So that just gives you a little bit of a background of some of the things that we have been doing historically. Moving now to where we are, to the present time. So again, beginning with Glenwood South, this year alone, we have really seen a considerable growth, a considerable amount of individuals coming and visiting the Glenwood South area. We've also seen that swell in the Fayetteville Street, Wilmington, and the Transit Mall area. As a result, we have dedicated more resources to that, to both areas. And you'll hear me say throughout this update that, continuing to put police resources is not the end-all, be-all. We don't have an infinite amount of resources that we can put downtown, but we're committed to dedicating what we can in order to address the problem. For me, it's going to be all hands on deck. I have said that, and I'll continue to say that. It's going to take all of our services. It's going to take all of our resources in order to effectively control the issues that we're seeing in both Glenwood South and in our downtown core. I do want to uplift that we have had some great partners who have been side by side with us on this. Internal partners such as city transportation has been phenomenal, emergency management, ECC, Parks and Rec, solid waste, engineering services. We have all worked collaboratively, which has been wonderful. Our external partners, of course, has been the DRA. We've leaned on Wake County Sheriff's Office, ALE, North Carolina State Police. We've even called them in to come down to Glenwood South to help us out with some of our initiatives. So they have been wonderful partners, but we're going to have to continue to collaborate if we really want to make a difference. In terms of some of the resources that we have been using in our downtown area, one has been our hospitality unit, and they have focused primarily on Glenwood South. We have also our transit unit. They have been focusing on the transit mall. Our Acorns unit has been extremely instrumental in connecting those who are suffering from mental health challenges with wraparound services. And then we have had department-wide efforts, a combined effort. Every single police officer at the Raleigh Police Department at some time has been part of the solution in working in Glenwood South or working downtown. Just by way of reference, this is the map when I talk about the Glenwood South footprint. Looking at the map, in the north is Peace Street, in the south is Hillsborough, to the west is St. Mary's, and then to the east is South Harrington. By way of numbers, those of you who know me know that I'm very data-driven. The data tells us, of course, where to focus and how we need to focus. So when we look at Glenwood South by the numbers, we see our calls for service has decreased over last year, but our reported incidents have increased. I attribute that mostly just to the sheer number of people who are coming into the area. And with that, we are seeing an increase in the juvenile presence. We have seen juveniles as young as 15 years old, unaccompanied by an adult in the Glenwood South area. I don't know what a 15-year-old needs to be at Glenwood South at 1 a.m. in the morning, but that is the kind of things that our officers are seeing. Also, too, we've seen an increase in loitering. With the businesses in the downtown or in the Glenwood South area, the clubs, oftentimes they're at capacity. So then the line is very long, it wraps around, and those lines, people just begin to loiter. They hang around, they just idle in the area. We've also seen an increase in out-of-town visitors. So we know that people are coming from as far as, the mountains, from Charlotte, Virginia. We've really seen a concentration of people coming to Glenwood South from the Fayetteville area, Wilson, Lumberton, Rocky Mount, and even Durham. It's just a hodgepodge of everyone from everywhere coming into the area. With respect to crime numbers, as you can see, there has been reported instances of violence over the last year in most of the categories displayed here. On January 26th, we had the unfortunate incident of a homicide that occurred. Mr. David Millett lost his life while down in Glenwood South. And I will tell you that my officers and I were extremely frustrated over this incident because we had officers on every block. We had police cars stationed on every intersection. We had blue lights on. We really was trying to make this environment as safe as it can be, but then we had this incident occurred. It's really just indicative of the challenges of the volume of people that are just coming into this area. But despite the challenges, I will tell you that I have been extremely pleased with the efforts that we have made to get a handle on the violence. I truly believe that if our officers were not there, if we were not present, the numbers would really be astronomical. But just in regards to the proactive engagements that we have had, on August 18th, we integrated a new traffic pattern to reduce the cruising that we were seeing and the bottlenecking of the traffic. Also, too, we were getting reports of people doing burnouts in the parking lots, so we changed the traffic pattern to really reduce that and alleviate it. As you can see from this slide, that we have focused heavily on proactive measures targeting guns and drugs. Lieutenant Manukas and his team have led efforts of having groups of officers patrolling the area and also in ATVs to try to disrupt the criminal behavior that we were seeing. So year to date, we have made 104 arrests for carrying concealed weapons, and we have seized 137 illegally possessed firearms. That is a large number for such a small footprint area. I firmly believe that if we're going to stop this kind of violence that we're seeing and those carrying guns into this area, we've got to control the firearms that are coming into Glenwood South. And one way I believe we can do that is really requiring our night clubs, our night establishments to have magnetometers and to do better screenings of the individuals who are coming into those locations. If people know that they can't bring guns into Glenwood South or into those clubs and those locations, they're either going to leave them at home or they're going to stay at home. And as far as we're concerned, we're good with both of those. Turning to our business core and our transit mall, again, here's just a map of the area. It's Salisbury Street over to Person Street, and then Morgan Street down to Lenore. With respect to the numbers, we see the same pattern that we see in Glenwood South, where there's a decrease for calls for service, but there's an increase in reported incidents. Just like Glenwood South, we've seen an increase in the transit population and more people in general just in the area. We have individuals who get on the bus, they take the bus, they come down to the transit mall, and they stay. They become a resident, if you will, of the downtown area. Also, too, in the summertime, we saw an increase in the influx of juveniles who were downtown and just loitering, and that's part of the reason why we had our SROs present. Just as we've seen in Glenwood South, we also have seen a trend of people coming from out of town, coming to our business core and taking up residence in Raleigh. We've seen them from across Wake County, but we've also seen them out of state. With our crime stats for our business core, we look at the numbers, we see that there has been a significant increase in crime over last year. I'll begin with our homicides. We had 2. We had 1 at the Taz Grocery, and then we had 1 outside of the Go Raleigh station. We made arrests immediately in both of those, which is wonderful, but we still have seen the increase in aggravated assaults and also sexual assaults and offenses. With respect to the proactive engagements, we have done quite a bit. We have dedicated a lot of resources to being in the area. As you can see, we have done a fantastic job of making drug violation arrests, felony arrests, as well as misdemeanor arrests. Our officers are constantly being proactive in those areas, not targeting individuals who are just there, but individuals who are committing crime. We want to be very specific and sure that we're not just looking at people because they are there or because of their situation. We want to make sure that they're engaging in criminal behavior before we take action. After the homicide that we had a couple weeks ago, we really got together. I huddled with my team and I said, we really got to do some enforcement efforts in the transit mall particularly. That's where we were seeing a lot of activities. And so for the past 2 weeks, we really have concentrated our efforts there. I went down to the transit mall myself just to see it, and I was quite disturbed by what I was seeing. There was so much that was taking place there. So we have enacted a zero tolerance approach. My instructions to my team was that if there are quality of life concerns, if we have victimization going on in that area, we are going to take swift action concerning that. In the last 2 weeks, the results have been very impactful. Last week when I was down at the transit center, I think that was the first time probably in 2 years where I did not see people just loitering. I didn't see drug activity going on because of the emphasis that we have been placing there. But sadly, also, I saw individuals who had nowhere to go, and I think Bill talked about this as well. We recognize that there are those who are unhoused, those who do not have the resources. And so our Acorns team has been down there working with those individuals, providing services to those who need those services. But when you look at the numbers, you can see how significant they are. We had 132 misdemeanor charges, 75 physical arrests, 30 warrants that were executed in that area. Some of the crime that we are seeing and the disorder that we are seeing down on the transit mall include illegal drug possession, possession of drug paraphernalia, disorderly conduct, illegal firearm possession, ABC violations, and also trespassing charges. So now that I've told you where we are, we have to look at where we're going. So what is the future, and what activities and what kinds of things do we want to make sure that we impact? So the last 2 weeks have shown us what works. But the reality is, again, we can't keep increasing the number of officers that we put in downtown and in our core area. One, because we don't have an infinite amount of resources, but also two, because we are diverting resources from other parts of the city, which then means we have crime in other places that are occurring that goes unchecked. So our recommendation is that, one, we need more officers. We need to fill the vacancies that we have, and we have to make sure that we keep the officers that we do have here by taking good care of them. For Glenwood South, I would say that we are going to be expanding our hospitality unit, having more officers on that unit for additional eyes and ears. Also, too, we will continue to improve the flow of vehicular traffic, looking at how we divert that traffic. I will tell you that I am not a proponent of having streets closed and having the pedestrian traffic just in the streets, because the assault of Mr. Millett and also to a shooting that we had 2 weeks ago was a result of that pedestrian traffic spilling in into the roadways during egress time. So we will continue to keep the streets closed, but also keep the streets open for pedestrian traffic so that we don't have an overflow in there. We will also continue to proactively do policing measures to get guns and drugs off the streets. That is a daily endeavor for us. Also, too, I look to the businesses along Glenwood South to do a little bit more. I said it last year, I've said it again today, and I'll say it one more time, that we do need to make investments in magnetometers, that the businesses should do that, and that they should look at their screening protocols to make sure that no guns, no firearms, no weapons are going into those establishments. City Transportation has done a tremendous job of working on increasing the lighting and repairing the sidewalks, trimming the trees, and those kind of things. We need to continue to do that. Also, too, we've seen in the 600 block, though, of Glenwood South, where it's particularly dark, and also on the side streets are very dark. We need to light that up. We need better lighting. I know we're actively working and partnering with Duke Energy on that, but we need to make sure that we get those lighting in those areas. Also, too, we continue with our coordinated responses with ALE, ABC, and other law enforcement partners, and then keep the conversations with our business community. For our business core, Transit Mall area, we're going to also expand our transit unit. We have more officers now that they are off of training. That's going to be an opportunity for us to increase the number of officers in our transit unit. Also, too, we are working on a full-time bike squad. You're going to see more officers on patrol, on bicycles, as well as on foot in our downtown core area. We're also in the implementation phase of standing up our real-time crime center, which will allow businesses in the area to provide camera footage to us. They will opt in and we'll be able to see that footage, which will give us an opportunity to be proactive in our approaches. It's completely a force multiplier to have those camera systems. We're also going to be putting cameras along Glenwood South. I think that's going to help us to be able to identify suspects more quickly. Also, too, I believe that we have to explore additional measures to prevent individuals from remaining at the Go Raleigh station after hours. Certainly, we can trespass them now and get them out of there, but I think we should have more target hardening, where we have gates, where we have fencing, that kind of thing, so after hours, nobody can be on the property at all. And then lastly, we will continue to build the strong partnerships that we have with the businesses. We want that to continue. We want them to continue reporting incidents to us and let know what they are seeing. And we want them to remain in downtown. We want our businesses to be here. Most importantly, we have to continue to find resources for those who are unsheltered and those who are transient. In conclusion, I will say that this is a Raleigh for all. We want to make sure that we can do everything that we can from a safety perspective to make those who work, play, live, and work in Raleigh, that they feel comfortable and they want to be here. My team and I are fully committed to that, and we're going to do everything we can to make our city as safe as we can make it. With that, I'll conclude, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have of me or my staff.
Do you have any questions?
You want to start?
Councilmember Jones?
Thank you. Thank you so much for being here and for all the work that you are doing. When you mentioned the closing of the streets, how much longer can we actually do that?
Yeah, so we have had some conversation. Lieutenant Manukas, I'm going to have you come up and just talk a little bit about our plans moving forward with that.
Good afternoon, guys. Are you talking about the current system that we have in place?
Yeah, it's been there for I would say a month now.
Yes, ma'am. I think we can continue with it. We do every day and every weekend. We work to kind of fine tune it to see the exact times we have to open up the street where it works out a little bit better. So there's not an exact timing. I think it is sustainable, and every week we kind of adjust it a little bit just to see what works better and what doesn't. So it's kind of a fluid system that we're still working through.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And I had another question about the juvenile population that we were discussing. Since school started, has that decreased?
It has somewhat, but we still have some children that are not in school. And when we get out with those individuals, of course, we're going to call their parents, but then the parents don't have control over them. So we've seen it go down some than what it was in the summertime, but there's still that presence of juveniles out and about.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Councilmember Fort?
So it's been a long time since I hung out late, but I'm sort of curious about the loitering and the long lines. what would be a proposal or something, to present to the business owners, like at a certain time, they just say, we know you're not going to be able to get in, disperse the line or something, so people aren't just standing there for, 2 or 3 hours waiting and not likely to be able to get into the establishment.
Absolutely. That's our recommendation, that they just cut the line and say, that's it. We're at capacity. We don't believe that we're going to be able to get anyone else in. So therefore, we just shut the line down. And in that instance, too, then our officers can be there to say, the line is shut. You need to keep moving and not just hanging around the area.
Okay. Councilmember Patton?
Yeah, thanks for the presentation. Following up on that, I'm curious, do we have the legal authority to ask the establishments to do something like that, to cut the line?
We can recommend it to them. Or I defer to the attorneys. I'm sorry.
We can certainly look into that. We do have the authority to regulate businesses, and that's certainly something that we could explore.
Got it. Thank you. And then I think I've asked you this question, so forgive me, but the magnetometers, why are the businesses not sort of readily adopting them themselves already?
Right. So some of the feedback we've gotten about that is, one is the cost, and then secondly, many of them employ bouncers and security, and so they have the wands and they just wand the individual. But sometimes the wand misses somebody that might have a weapon on them or carrying the metal.
Got it. Okay.
And I do want to say, this is definitely not a slight on the businesses. The businesses have been cooperative. They are working with us. But again, it's going to be a collaborative. I think all of us have to work together if we're going to really, really be serious about cleaning up the things that we're seeing in Glenwood South and our downtown area as well.
Chief, one thing I would suggest too is talking to the building owners, the people who lease the property to these businesses. They can be very influential in asking them to comply. So that might be a tactic we also want to look at. But I did want to ask you about the drug arrest. I mean, that was like, boom. What are you finding? What are you seeing out there?
A little bit of everything. We're seeing prescription drugs, but we're seeing everything from cocaine to crack to fentanyl, just a gamut of everything out there. We've seen the increases in fentanyl. I mean, and that's just across the city completely, but in the transit mall, it's everything. It's really everything.
Okay. And to follow up on a question that was asked earlier about the sustainability of Glenwood South and closing off that street, I've heard nothing but positive comments from residents and business owners. The residents say it has helped keep the streets quiet. You don't have that drive-through trolling and traffic and the motorcycles with no mufflers and whatnot. The feedback has been very, very positive. And from the business owners, they are saying, thank you. This is getting people to leave. They're not loitering like they used to. The presence has really helped. And so I just think that this is something that has had a really positive effect. I've also heard the same thing from business owners in downtown with the increased police presence. How do you see that all kind of playing out?
And I agree with you 100%. Being down there and seeing it myself, I said, this works and this is good. It creates a safe environment for everyone. The sustainability of it, I mean, it's touchy, right? It all depends on our staffing. It depends on what else is going on in the city. We have devoted resources to that. We will continue to do that as long as we can. I can't tell you how long that is because, again, there's so many factors that come into play. I think the biggest thing is just ensuring that we can just increase our staffing numbers. Our officers that we have, they need to know that they're appreciated. They need to know that we value them, and so that we can keep them here and they don't go to other agencies. If we can maintain that and get all the way to our full staffing, I think that's going to go a long ways in being able to have the extra resources to do these things.
So we're at about 91 officers, I believe now.
Roughly, yes, ma'am.
Vacancies. When is your next academy?
We have an academy in place right now, and our next academy is in January.
Okay.
And we are hiring, so if anybody wants to be a police officer, come join us.
Okay, that's a good way to announce it. Yes, thank
Yes,
you,
ma'am.
Chief, and thank you to you and your team for the hard work that they've put in. I mean, they're making a difference, and I think the feedback we're seeing has been very positive. So thank you.
thank you for that.
Okay. Next, we have
Transportation.
transportation.
Will
Who's
be-
speaking on behalf?
Yeah, we'll
Okay.
have David Eatman come
David?
up and.
Hi, good afternoon. David Eatman, Transportation Transit. So I'm going to describe in a few slides, this shouldn't be long, but really what we've done to look at supplemental security at Go Raleigh Station and talk about that and some of our decision points. We are somewhat early in this process, so we've got some things to think about. But we have contacted 3 local firms that specialize in security. We proposed to them 2 shifts or 2 8-hour shifts at a 16-hour span, but 2 officers on duty during each of those shifts. Certainly, as they assessed our situation, and I've got a next slide that I'll go into a little more in depth on this, they were recommending armed security officers or company police. So I'll talk a little bit more about that. But as we do this, certainly we want to collaborate with RPD, DRA, and as we move forward with selecting a service, we want all of this to be coordinated for sure. So as we think about security, it comes in a bunch of different types as a contracting agency. So as we think about that, there's company police, and company police have very much the same powers as RPD. So they're highly trained. Certainly there's limitations on this, but they're armed and they can have arresting authority on the property in which they're contracted to secure. Beyond that is security. Security is also can be used, but security comes in a bunch of different forms. It can be armed with a firearm, or it can not have a firearm. So that security level really has to be determined between the contracting agency and the agency that will perform the security, because decision points have to be made by both of those entities on how that works. So as we think about that, we need to figure out what that decision point is and what level of security or service would we want in the transit station if we secured supplemental security. When it comes to company police, I would say that, again, they're highly trained, very much are similar powers to RPD, but they are in short supply. So all agencies or entities throughout a region are working or actually competing with each other for that limited resource of that very high-skilled company police officer. So again, it just complicates matters a bit more. We don't want to be counterproductive with other activities that we may have internally or externally that are contracting for company police. So as we think through those decision points, there's a couple of ways that we can move forward. Certainly, we can look at existing city contracts. There are contracts that have services for some of our city facilities that provide security. Certainly don't know if that's possible, but that's something that we would look into. The no-brainer is certainly we could go out for proposals and just do a brand new procurement for security for the station. So we would put out a scope of work, receive those proposals, select the best qualified firm, and then negotiate a contract term. And then through our contract with RATP Dev, within our contract, we have a number of service add-ons that are available within that contract structure. We could potentially allow them to procure a security firm, and under that scenario, they would be the contract holder, but we would have shared oversight between our contractor and the city. Some may think that has pros and cons, but certainly RATP Dev and the 300 employees that it employs to operate Go Raleigh, they're the ones that are at Go Raleigh Station from 4:30 in the morning till after midnight at night. So they certainly have a huge amount of knowledge about the day-to-day interactions at the station. But again, something that we will have to think through and determine what is the best path forward. So regardless of any of those options, again, we want to make sure that we're coordinating with the DRA and RPD as we look to potentially expand our security opportunities. That's really all I have today. I wanted to give you a brief update on kind of where we are in our efforts and our thought processes, but I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Councilmember Jones?
If we can go back to the possibility of armed officers, you said there's similar powers to RPD. What does that mean?
So they would have, and I'm not an expert on criminal law here, so I'm going out on a limb a bit, but from my research, I have found that company police would have arresting authority on the grounds on which they are contracted to patrol or maintain. Again, they've gone through much of the same training, if not all of the same training as an RPD or a police officer would. So they do carry that status and that ability to arrest. You go down to a security level, then a security level does not have that authority, regardless of what type of, whether they carry a firearm or not. Whatever they carry, if they carry anything at all, is there for, really for self-defense or to stop some type of, imminent danger to another individual.
Yeah, I just saw that in the first slide, this was the recommended was the armed officers.
So again, we contacted 3 firms. Their initial statement to us is that they would like to have some form of armed. That would come in the form of company police, or that would come in the form of an armed security guard. But that's, again, a major decision point because those are 2 different skill sets per se. One has not probably, but one has more training than the other. And so, again, just a decision point that we would have to make.
Definitely, and that's why we're talking about it now. So I'm excited to have that conversation. Have you spoken with RPD? How does RPD feel about that?
RPD would certainly want, in my opinion, well, I have spoken with them, and they
Chief looks like she wants to speak.
And
Yeah,
I'm gonna wisely let the chief speak and get out of the way. So thank you.
So yeah, we've had the conversation. I see this as an opportunity for a force multiplier, having extra eyes and ears to supplement, not replace our officers, because it is our duty to protect our city, and we will do that. And just as I stated before, we need more officers, but I think in the interim, this is an opportunity to just supplement what we're doing. There's already a lot of security guards and armed guards and company police in different areas throughout our city for different businesses and that kind of thing. So we're not talking about eradicating or removing all our officers, but just working together.
Thank you.
I've seen a spike in the number of restaurants and who have hired security details. Maggie Kane at A Place at the Table, they have hired security because of the issues they have faced. The convenience store near Sir Walter Coffee, there is a armed security walking there constantly. I've heard from other businesses too that they are considering the same thing. Is there a way to coordinate those efforts as well? And maybe that's a question for DRA.
Mm-hmm. And certainly Bill can come up if he wants to address that. I think we would work like how we are working right now with a lot of our security companies, which we have been doing for years. This is not a new concept. This is not anything that's different than we have done as police departments, and many police departments do the same thing. When we talk about the transit center, we see it in other cities as well where they have a combination of sworn police officers and company police or security guards. So I would say it would be kind of a setup like that. I don't know if Bill wants to add anything else to that.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think the key there is particularly coordination among those security services in public right-of-way. I think it's harder to do it among those that are inside of the business themselves. But there is also a reality that there's only so many firms that do this. So some of the talks and conversation have been around that so that we can get some efficiency and some economy of scale on that. But we've had conversations with some of those property owners who have done that, so we're aware of the firms they're working with and try to keep everybody coordinated.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Councilmember Patton.
Yeah, back to you, Dave. I have a question about the anticipated cost and like, where's the money going to come from for this service?
So we do have a limited amount of funds within our existing budget that we feel that we could allocate towards this. We have, or we are working with our partners through the Wake Transit Plan because we view this as critical to our long-term success as a transit agency. We want to make sure that we continue to grow ridership. We make sure that our customers and riders feel comfortable and safe, which is always one of our top 3 or 4 metrics for what do you want in your transit system. So we view this as critical. So we are looking for funds through that particular process as well. As a matter of fact, we have a meeting after this meeting with our larger Wake Transit partners to discuss what that might look like, not only for us, but really for our partners throughout the region, how we can make sure that we're all addressing this collectively. And making sure, again, that we build a very strong, safe, and efficient transit system. So,
I know this is a major concern of Go Triangle as well.
And if I could put you on the spot, you think it's going to be $250,000, $1 million for a year? Do you have an idea yet?
I would say that it would range between 250 and 500.
Okay.
I know that's a big range, but obviously with this type of setup, we're looking at 2 shifts, 16 hours. That can vary, and certainly we want to make sure that we deploy those resources when they're most needed. So that's probably going to evolve over time,
Sure.
but certainly as a starting budget, that would be about what we're thinking.
Okay, thanks. That's helpful for me. One last question. I want to make sure I have enough time for the public, but one last from me. We heard the mention of transit police earlier in the presentation. I was curious if you had any commentary from the transportation side around like whether that feels like something you'd like to take on in the future or how you've seen it work in other cities, et cetera.
I think that, I think that certainly that's going to be a partnership no matter what, or whether that is something that the Raleigh Police Department takes over completely, or whether we keep that joint effort. Certainly, those are going to be very close decision points for both agencies. I do know that the RPD is very effective, and we appreciate their assistance at Go Raleigh Station. As you saw in our last presentation to council, Mr. Paul Callum, we have about 7,000 boardings a day. So that's like a small airport that's in the middle of your downtown. So there's a lot of traffic there. Anyway, it's hard work, but we're committed to make sure that everyone feels safe and comfortable in our station.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Any other presenters?
No, that concludes staff's presentations.
Okay. Who from the public is going to speak today? Could you raise your hand? Okay, here's what I'd like to do. I'm going to start over here with the business community, since a lot of this initiated with their discussions. So I don't know, I saw a couple of hands go up over there, so if you could come up to the podium, those who would like to speak. Then we're going to start with the residents here, and then we'll end up on that side. Okay.
All right, thanks for the time. I'll try and be quick. David Meeker, I'm here today as a partner in Young Hearts Distilling, which is a business on the bus station block on South Wilmington Street. The new issue we've been dealing with is the kids hanging out. Didn't really exist before 6 or 8 months ago, and then really cranked up this summer. Some of the kids are selling drugs, and you end up with things related to selling drugs, fights, overdoses, had the 2 stabbings. And so we're trying to get a hold of it. It's really hard to do business when you have big groups of kids hanging out in front, selling drugs, some of them selling drugs. So everyone on the blocks, business is not as good as it used to be. And you get to the point where you get worried about people moving out of downtown because business is hard. We don't want it to get to that point. One thing I want to say is the recent presence by RPD the last 2 weeks has been a game changer. It's not where we want it to be yet, but I think these things, you have to have presence over time. And so if we could keep that level of presence through whatever means, that would be much appreciated and would help everybody. I think in a couple months with that level of presence, we could all be in a very different place. And then the last thing I want to say is these kids, like some of them are really young, 15, 16, 17, and we're putting them in a position where they can get into trouble, and that's not good for them either. Folks, selling drugs, getting into fights that they might not get into otherwise. So we should also look out for them and sort of buckle down to make sure they're not, in a vulnerable spot either. So that's all I have. Thanks for listening.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. First, I'd like to thank everyone for allowing me the time to speak today. I'm always happy to work toward solutions for our community. My business is called The Davy, and I'm on the corner of Blunt and Davy Street here downtown. I'm also a homeowner of 10 years in Founders Row community, right across the street. Over the past several years, I'm sure everybody in this room knows crime has upticked in our area, in the Moore Square District, and specifically over the few months in the Moore Square District, it's really impacted our business. At first, it was aggressive panhandling, and not the down on my luck type of panhandling, but more of the aggressive type where if they didn't get the right response, it was met with physical threats or verbal abuse. It's also hard to believe now that homeowners or business owners are having to clean up human feces outside of our shops, needles from our patios, and deal with folks exposing themselves inside their bars mid-afternoons. Just yesterday evening, I had to defuse a situation where a known criminal was brandishing a knife in the air, screaming at pedestrians that were passing by, all while drinking out of an open container 20 feet from my patio. My patio was full of patrons at the time. A lot of them were new, which I'm sure probably don't feel that safe to come back down and see us again. RPD's response time was roughly 15 minutes when the call was put out, but I don't believe my patrons felt left with a safe feeling after the subject was removed from our property and directed across the street. I'm fully aware and very appreciative of RPD's efforts to combat these problems with the limited number of personnel and resources they have at their hands. But I'm here today is to gain a better understanding of what steps our leaders are going to take to help secure the key element that keeps our city vibrant, and that is safety. Safety to walk the streets without fear of being harassed or attacked. Safety for our business owners and staffs that have made the investment and commitments to our downtown in Raleigh. And safety to the residents and guests who shop at our stores, attend our festivals, and truly keep the city vibrant. Thank you so much for your time.
Could we have your name, please?
Matt Coleman.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Kim Hammer. I'm going to try to keep this short. I'm really nervous. This isn't what I usually do. I am a homeowner downtown. I own Bittersweet in the Fayetteville Street area. I also own Johnson Street Yacht Club in the Glenwood area. And additionally, I have an office that I pay rent on that is right next to Cafe Luna. So I think that should give you an idea of my walk around. Bittersweet has been downtown for over 10 years now. We were closed for 2 weeks during COVID. Other than that, we've been there. And I guess I want to be very clear about how different the incidences that we've experienced in the last 9 months are, to speak to the escalation of what is happening in the downtown Fayetteville Street area. I would say that we have on camera and in person witnessed a lot of these juveniles gang beating up homeless people, robbing them, and to a point where the houseless population is asking to be arrested because they feel safer. I've witnessed that directly across the street from my business. In November of last year, we brought in DRA to give a wonderful workshop to our managers to teach them how to speak with our houseless population and our panhandlers to sort of diffuse situations. It was very effective. We are armed with resources for them. We reach out to them. This is different. What we're experiencing this year is very, very different, and I'm struggling to hold on to my clients, my guests. I'm struggling to hold on to my employees. My produce provider, my produce delivery man from Blue Sky, about a month ago was harassed and stalked for 2 days by criminals walking and following him on his entire route. He came into our place shaken because there were 4 teenagers threatening to kill him if he did not take them over to Taz and buy them whatever they wanted. This is not normal. This is not Raleigh. I've lived here my whole life. This is different. Last Tuesday, we were lucky enough, especially I think any downtown business will tell you right now, on a Tuesday night to have a buyout from a corporation through our partnership with Taste Carolina of over 200 people downtown. My management and my staff spent the bulk of that event chasing away panhandlers, as they're used to doing. But at one point, the situation escalated to a man who would not leave, who stepped to my manager and told her that he was going to break her jaw, threatened to kill her, then turned to step to my 6'4" husband manager over here to escalate the situation even further. We called the police. They did not come. They did not come. We got a phone call from them 45 minutes later asking if this individual was still on our property needing to be dealt with. We have been told by RPD that they cannot legally trespass someone. If that person doesn't remain on our property, we can't have them arrested. I just want to be clear. My staff has been spit on. My staff has been thrown up against glass windows. My staff has been sexually groped. My staff has been threatened with bricks, and they have had their lives threatened on a regular basis. This is a daily thing. It's incredibly stressful. We can't take it anymore, and we need more security. We are at a point that we now have to hire private security, which, to be perfectly blunt, and I'm fine with sharing this information, our profits are down for the first time ever if you take COVID out of this situation, obviously. We have had a successful business that has only risen every year that we've been open, and now it's down. And some months it's down as much as 50%. That does not allow us to pay for security. Their money is not there. And I'm just trying to hold on to my employees that are working their butts off to be part of downtown and make it better. But I don't know how we can be asked to stay in this environment. We were trained to sell drinks, to sell cupcakes, to help spread hospitality in downtown, not to deal with these situations. And it's not being handled by police officers when I'm regularly getting told that they have 2-hour wait times or no one ever shows up. We need more help. I know they need more officers, we need more security. We need more, and we need it now, because every business is leaving or being asked if we want to leave by other places in this community where we don't have security issues. Thank you very much for giving me this much time to talk. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for letting me be here. My name is Rusty Sutton. My husband and I own the Green Monkey. We're the new kid on the block. We've been fully open now for 4 weeks. And I want to just preface this as we were so freaking excited to be downtown. We took over a building that was beautifully revamped, where the old Raleigh sandwich shop. Nothing had been in this building since 1989. And we just loved to be the first one taking over this building and to be among such great neighbors like Young Hearts, Tombo, Trina, we love her. We love all of our neighbors. But 2 weeks, for the first 2 weeks, things were really going well. You know, we saw numbers we were enjoying. Well, then, all of a sudden, we started seeing things slow down. We started hearing rumblings. And then things started happening. First of all, I've never seen so many needles on the ground. I'm not used to that. I guess I live a sheltered life. We were on Hillsborough Street for 10 years, so we're a viable business. And having people cross over our fence looking for something. And then we find a needle in our own courtyard. Then 2 weeks ago, we had a person walk into the store. I was downstairs doing our music bingo event, but upstairs, this happened upstairs. He came in, stuck his finger out like this and said, "This is a holdup, stick your hands up." First of all, he could have been shot. Second of all, thankfully, not many people heard because we were busy. And then he just walked around. But one of my part-time helpers saw it, and of course it made her feel uneasy. Hell, it would have made me feel uneasy, but I didn't know about it until after the fact. We got him on camera, that's fine. But I had a whole store full of people. How do you think that made them feel? Last week, or week before last, we had a person walk in that just yelled, said, "I want a drink. Give me a drink." I said, "No, sir, go down to the convenience store." "Well, I'm going to steal these socks." I said, "Sir, please don't." I'm not sure if he ever stole them or not, but I had to deal with that. And Drew was downstairs, and so I started calling Drew, and then he started mocking me. And there were 2 people in the store from out of town. Out of town visitors saw this. And now last week, we have a run club every Tuesday and Thursday with Stonewall. We had several female members come up to me and say, "Rusty, when it starts getting dark earlier, I probably will not come. I do not feel safe." Guys, we are a safe space for everyone. It's a safe space for you to be you. I don't know what to do. I've never done anything like this. And I can't work for 10 years and then move to a place that I love. 10 years on Hillsborough to downtown Raleigh thinking I was going to a better space. I was going to a better place, that I would enhance our monkey fan experience. But they're afraid to come. Does that resonate with anybody here? They are afraid of Raleigh. So thanks for listening.
Hi, I'll be quick. My name is Sam Dinner. I work for Taste Carolina Food Tours. I have been running food tours for the company for 10 years. So I have been walking downtown on all streets in the Capital District, all the way from Transfer Code now to Moore Square, and for 10 years. So I've definitely seen all the change. I think our biggest thing is that we are trying to convince corporate customers that they want to go downtown, and it's getting harder when safety is bad. We've got corporate groups that are getting harassed by people. We've had a corporate tour, like Kim mentioned, we had 200 people last Tuesday that were going through. And another time there was a lady that obviously was struggling with some mental health, taking a brick and running at one of my guests on the tour. We did call police. I've called police a handful of times. They did come, but it took a little while. It wasn't immediate. She had made her way down a few blocks, and when they did show up, police were very aware of her. They knew her by name. They knew what she was doing, and she was still just on the loose, walking around, looking to harass people. My main comment is that I know that security is being worked on for dark time and nighttime hours, but I run tours anywhere from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m., and I see this throughout the entire day. So it's not just at night. It's happening in the middle of a lunch rush. It's happening in the middle afternoon, 2 or 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock when businesses are leaving, and it's constant harassment. And a lot of people are asking us to do tours in Cary or do tours out in Crabtree. There's no history there. There's no, Cary, yes, is growing, I'm aware, but there's no great history out that way in restaurants, and we want to keep the business in Raleigh. We want to continue to bring people to our downtown area, and we want them to feel safe. We want them to come back. So we bring thousands and thousands of people throughout all these restaurants all year long, and we want to keep that going and give them continued reason to support our local restaurants. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Lutrina Blaylock,
Could
and
you
I.
put the microphone down?
Put it, okay.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Lutrina Blaylock. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I wasn't going to speak until I saw Rusty and Kim, and I do want to say I'm at 217 South Flemington Street, and when they decided to move in, I sent them an email saying, "Oh, I'm so happy you're coming over," but I was thinking, "Oh my gosh, you do not know what you're going to get yourself into," because we are currently not open to the public because things are different. We've been there since 1970. Things are different. I will not allow my daughters to come downtown unless I'm with them. And my nephews, who usually would take the transit, they have special needs, we do not allow them to go through the transit station at this time. I think it would be a good idea if we could have some kind of fencing, or even when you pass through the little spins. A lot of the juveniles, they don't like their pictures being taken or being seen. So if they have to go through those little spins, at least they know that someone may see them. So just something in between the Go Raleigh, because my deck backs the Go Raleigh station. And if you ever pass through there, you'll see signs saying, "Jesus be a fence." I put all this, I let Rusty, I said, please let your patrons know this is about the people, trying to keep people from loitering and doing bad things. And actually, I've installed a lot of cameras and lights, and it's worked. But I don't know what the laws are, but as for the teens wearing masks, we can't see their faces. It makes people nervous. I have a psychological practice. I could help with like assessments, but I rent an office in North Raleigh. I won't move it downtown, and we're just waiting for something to happen where this is kind of taking a little bit more control, but it is very bad. It's very bad. Since the 80s, 90s, this group is different, and they're scary. Usually I can talk to people and feel a little bit more comfortable. This group is different. So whatever we can do, it would be great. Thanks.
Thank you.
Well, first I want to say thanks for the past 2 weeks for the RPD.
Could we have your name?
Heather Havlina. I'm the general manager at St. Rock Oyster Bar on Wilmington Street. So on a day-to-day basis, we deal with this every day. I've been down here for 2 years. The restaurant has been down here for 6 years. We've had record high sales. At the beginning of this year, the past 3 months, we've seen a decrease of 30%. And I'd like to read a review. It's not the first one. It's certainly not going to be the last one, from a guest that's dined with us. Great restaurant and food. With that said, won't be coming back to this area until the street and the surrounding area gets cleaned up. What a clown show. Police in the city need to do something about that. I too have cleaned up human feces. We have a front patio and we have a back patio. I've cleaned up poop. I've cleaned up pee several times. We have people sleeping on the back patio. We can't even seat those 20 seats that we have based on the people that are bothering on a day-to-day basis. We have kids out front. We have kids smoking weed every day, blocking the front of the restaurant. I do use the Raleigh Alliance, but I think they are only equipped to do a certain amount. And I do appreciate what they do. When I call, they come. They're great. They walk some of our guests to the car. They walk my employees to the car. But my number one issue is I have 40 employees. And with that said, their safety is number one to me. I have people ranging from 18 to 44, and a lot of the younger ones work at night until I'm there till 1 in the morning. And 1:30 in the morning, I sometimes leave by myself. I know that I shouldn't. I do use the Raleigh Alliance for it, but coming in here, I forgot coming in here that I was too gonna have to go through. I had 2 tasers and 2 pocket knives to protect me when I leave. I had to hide it outside so that I could come in, and that's not. I grew up in North Raleigh. I went to UNC, graduated from UNC. I live in Durham now, so I think that, regardless of the sales and business numbers, we are looking into hiring private police, but My safety for my staff is number one. My staff, police, myself, I have my manager here as well. We police the restaurant. We stand outside and make sure, we walk our guests outside to make sure they're getting to their cars. It's ridiculous. I do call the cops very often because I need them. And it often seems like we're not a priority. And we are backed up to the bus station. It just doesn't seem like we're a priority. It does often take 15 to 20 minutes for people to get there. And I do understand, maybe we aren't a priority because we call so much. But at the end of the day, ultimately, if I'm in that restaurant, I had someone walk through. There was a man outside that was sitting on a motorcycle that belonged to one of our staff members, came in with a knife, open knife, pocket knife, coming through the restaurant looking for the lady who had asked for him to get off the car. Called the police, or the motorcycle, called the police. It was over by the time they got there. Anything could have happened. And knowing that if there's situations like that and my staff isn't safe, that is terrifying, absolutely terrifying. Forget about me and my safety. I've got the safety of 40 people at my fingertips, and that's terrifying to know that when they walk to their car, they're gonna walk into seeing maybe something that's happening at Taz's, or I walk in every day, there's needles on the floor in on the stairs to the parking deck. There's people upstairs in the corners of the parking decks doing heroin. And it is a constant issue. I come in every day, the group of kids that just hang out in the square all day, they know me as the white bitch. And that's fine. It's just kind of that stuff every day, and it is taxing. People don't want to come. I have a list. I have papers right here that I don't want to bore you with, but these are the issues that we deal with every day. And I do understand that there's a lot going on, but we need help. We need help. Our owner, Sonny Gerhardt, he's a James Beard nominated chef, and he chose to be here. And I think it's a gift. What we have to offer the city is a gift, and it needs to be coveted.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Hi, I'm Greg Hayden, 133 Fayetteville Street. I represent Empire Properties and Empire Eats, which is a company that I founded 30 years ago. And I keep hearing things are different, and they are very different. 30 years when I started this company and started coming downtown, I went at night to the places that I thought were bad because I wanted to make sure we were in the places that weren't bad. So I'd drive around, walk through Fayetteville Street Mall, and what I found was Bragg Street was rugged, but downtown wasn't bad. There was just nobody there. So we've spent the last 30 years trying to create a very welcoming, inviting, hospitable community in downtown that welcomed everyone, regardless of your economic status, the neighbors to the east, to the west. And we tried to reinvigorate this town. And I feel like a number of people are here today because of the work we try to do directly or indirectly to say, hey, downtown is the best place to be. And I do believe we were right. I do believe it will be again, but things are different. What has happened, and thank you all for speaking, and I'm sorry for what y'all have gone through, and I promise you, you saved me 20 minutes because I could tell the same stories. We've all been there. We have 450 people that work with us. They're all scared. They've all held people that have been assaulted. They've all called the police with varying degrees of success. But things are different, and I do believe that post-COVID, we as a community, and honestly, you as a city, forgot that downtown was important or it needed to be nurtured. And it changed. It changed in a very big way, and it changed in a very bad way. But I will say that the efforts of the police the last 2 weeks have been extraordinary, okay? Partially because we have a quality police force that really understands how to do police work and social services professionals who know how to do that. And when they're allowed to do their job, we have good results. When they're adequately staffed, they have good results. We've had conversations with them. We've created solutions with them, and we appreciate all they do for us. So I'm not going to sit here and say they aren't good at what they do. They are. There's just not enough of them, okay? If we can continue to recruit, take care of, and train our police force, then they can take care of our city. And when I hear we don't have budget for or can't afford to pay them, I go to the numbers, okay? And when we look at the numbers, I'm sure y'all have looked at the numbers too. 1.7% of the revenue for the city of Raleigh comes from Fayetteville Street. 1.7%. We have 2 officers. Normally we have 2 officers in all of downtown. Now, if you look at all of downtown, over 5% of the revenue for the city of Raleigh comes from essentially where the DRA is. So I think it's the issue of if nobody is watching, where's it going to go? It's going to go to the worst possible place. It's your 3-year-old, and you hand them a lighter and say, hey, I'm going to go to the grocery store, don't do anything wrong. Of course bad things are going to happen because we're not taking care of it. Now that we're focusing on it, we need to continue to focus on it. And the stories that you're hearing about guests in downtown, we see it from tenants. Every week we have 1 or 2 tenants say, we're not renewing, we don't feel safe downtown, we're not coming downtown because we're not comfortable here. Really love the space. If y'all can fix it, we'll come back. I'm talking about NBA players that I'm showing space to on a Saturday night to do a shoe store. He has one in Houston, thinking about one in Raleigh. He walks out and goes, is it always like this? I'll call you later, right? So we're not talking about someone who isn't savvy into what a downtown looks like, right? We're talking about mom and pop to everywhere in between. So we have to fix this. There are resources to fix it. We're paying for the resources to fix it. And one other thing I'd like to say about downtown, and conversations with the chief, she's very attentive, and she has said she was going to do some things, and she has. And one of the things she brought up to me was, have you thought of private security? And we have. We have private security. As a matter of fact, they're here right now. It's the Renfro Group. We have the Renfro Group at such a high level, they're also tenants of ours because we use them so much. So we pay our taxes to pay the police, right? But then we pay DRA for clean and safe, and they pay for security. And then we pay for security. So we're paying for security 3 times, and we're still not getting it. So if we have gone through the trouble of creating this initiative that the police is on right now, which is doing a great job, it is making a difference. Let's continue on and fix it, and then we can drop the amount of resources we're spending on downtown to a reasonable level, and let's hire them. Let's hire and keep. When I look at our restaurants, if I bring a chef on and I train him and he leaves, I've lost so much more than his salary because of all the time I've spent training him and all it cost me to go get another one. So if we start looking at that and we think about, well, then my restaurant goes down because I don't have a good chef. That's what's happening in downtown. We're paying so much more for security, and our downtown is diminishing, and it's easily fixed. We just have to focus on it. All watched indicators changed. It's a law of physics. So we just need to put our eyeballs on it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next, we have, I saw about 4 hands raised here. If you could come up. I noticed I did not set a time limit on speaking because I wanted everybody to hear, but we probably have about 20 minutes left. So, but anybody else who would like to come speak, if you could stand. Thank you.
My name is Philip Poe from the Glenwood, Brooklyn neighborhood. I think you know us well. I'm not going to dwell on the problems that we're having. Obviously, they're spilling over from the downtown district. I've been reluctant to say this, but I'm going to say it now based on what I have just heard from all these folks that have businesses downtown. Raleigh has a crisis. And if you have a crisis, you have to do dramatic things to deal with that crisis. One of the things I did do last night is looked at the budget for the Raleigh Police Department. And I was rather astonished by what I saw. I looked at their head count for field and special operations. It was, I think, 587 people. In 2021, it was 589. I say, you look at the growth of the city, and you look at the rates of crime. I think a lot of the crimes require a lot more effort by the police department. And I said, that number doesn't make sense at all. Then I looked at their budget, and I think it was $131 million. You know that we have seen a lot of inflation over the last few years. So I grabbed a number, I think I said probably 20% over the last 3 years, which probably was light. And it means we're not spending any more money when you basically deflate the number to basically 2021 costs. We're not spending any more money than we were spending back in 2021. That doesn't make any sense to me. I encourage you to go back and look at the budget once again, listen to the police department, see what they need. We are in extraordinary times. We do have a crisis, and you have to do better. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Octavia Rainey, and I'm here to talk about the bus terminal. I want to take a step back to 26 years ago when the city of Raleigh stopped number 6 from going to Crabtree Valley Mall because they said black people bring crime. They stopped the bus. Me, Bruce Leitner, Margaret Rosemary, Brad Thompson, and a group of other people, we protested. This was 26 years ago. Y'all stopped the bus. That was a crying shame. I am very concerned because I teach people how to ride the bus. I have been doing that for 15 years. So I'm down in Moore Square a lot. I want to go back to 2011, 2012, 2013, when y'all did hire private duty security. I call them RoboCops. They were out of order. Do you know that in 2012, one of the RoboCops had his knee on the guy's neck and all of us ran over there? I called David Eatman. He did not return my call. But you know what, to be honest, David hasn't returned my calls in about 10 years anyway, because I always complain about Moore Square. But the point of it is that for the city of Raleigh, you must understand what Raleigh was then and what it is now is two different things. You have really grown, and with growth come crime. So don't be blaming all of this on the people who catch the bus at Moore Square. I object to the fence. I object to the RoboCop style of policing. I asked this and I asked it again. Are they gonna have the body cam cameras on them? Are they? You can't have them down there running after black people going crazy. I passed out to y'all a report from 2011, 2012, 2013. There were only 4 white people. The rest were black, just as black as I am. They were targeted. Now, I don't want to see this happening again, and I am against the RoboCop. But don't blame all of this on black people who catch the bus, who need the bus. Don't do that. I'm against that. Don't even try. I hear what the business is saying. I was in New York 6 months ago, and I saw the same thing there. And New York's supposed to be one of the most glamorous places to visit. I saw panhandling. I saw prostitution. I saw all of that there. And in New York, they tell you, hold on to your pocketbook when you're in New York. So I see this as a growth issue. I see this as the city is not taking care of the homeless. You need a mental health facility where they can go and stay in Raleigh. It is ridiculous that we aren't looking at this. What you're really talking about is mental health. And you gotta have a place for them to go. You've got to do better with the homeless. You've got to do. So my thing is, don't bring the RoboCops down there. I need to know if they're gonna have body cams. I need to know, are they trained? Who's gonna be held accountable? Because the show ain't David Eatman. Now, I can speak for that. It ain't him. So I have a lot of questions, but my concern, don't be blaming this on black folk. Don't do that. Because at that bus station is the only place that you will find concentration of blacks. They ride the bus, they go to work, they do everything. And I want to say another thing. I don't even think y'all are aware that you have a high number of school children who do catch the bus. You have them in the year-round and the regular. So that needs to be looked at again. But I am concerned about what I'm hearing, but I'm just telling folk, don't blame all this on black folk. Don't do that. And Moore Square, I will admit, yeah, it is some changes because I come down here and complain about it myself. But what I am saying, don't blame all this on the black people who catch the bus.
Hi, good afternoon. My name's Angela Floyd, and I live in the Paramount at Glenwood South. I think Octavia's comments were really relevant and a segue to what I wanted to talk about today. We have problems on Glenwood South, and there's a great police presence, and I hear that that's not, it's not sustainable long-term, and I agree it shouldn't be. I think it's a short-term solution, and we need to really figure out why this is happening. Then I hear from the business owners, and thank you all for your businesses, how things have changed. Things have changed, they've gotten worse, we need more police. The Raleigh Police Department does a great job, but I think we need to focus on the problem. I think we're attacking there's a problem, we're attacking a problem, we're not attacking the solution. Why have things changed? Why are people so angry? Why are they more aggressive? Are the young kids coming? And I don't know. Should we look at mental health or some kind of community engagement experts to say, what is the real core? What's the root cause of all of this? People are angrier now. Why are they angrier? Is it because as a city we've grown and there's a lot for you to do if you have money? But what about the people that live in places where there isn't money? Some of these children, maybe they're mad because they can't afford to go in that restaurant, so they're a little bit angry. I don't know. I just say I think we need to spend some time looking at that. What's available for young people to do down here that doesn't cost? Everything we have, we can buy if we can afford it. But what about the people that can't? Are there things that we could afford, offer them that would be activities that would be more wholesome where they wouldn't just have to hang out? But that'd be some of my suggestions as well. And I think the same thing with Glenwood South. We're focusing on needing more police, and thank you for that. I think it has helped. I don't want to live in a city where we need armed police on the streets with flashing lights all the time. I want to figure out why we need them. And the same, I think, would apply on that side. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. We have about 10 minutes left.
Okay, good afternoon. I'm Larry Miller from Glenwood South. I just want to publicly again praise the Raleigh Police Department for the presence that they've been providing the last month or so. It has made a big difference As Mayor said, the residents feel safer. And again, it's just for 5 hours Friday night, 5 hours Saturday night. It's not a big commitment. It's not over time, but it is in that short period of time. It is important. And it has made a difference. The noise has decreased. The businesses are still doing fine. And it has cut down on the people loitering on the street and has been very helpful. One thing to consider, and I know you're going to be having some listening sessions on the budget for next year, but this, I'm getting preempting that and saying, consider increasing the resources for the police department. When they have the resources, they can do the job. They can provide the services that we need. That's not the only solution. There are a lot of other things that need to be done, but that's one aspect of it. And please take that into consideration, as several other people have said. To be able to hire and retain the officers, you have to reward them and give them what they're due. Thanks.
Hello, good afternoon. I am Nicoy Williams, and I'll keep my comments brief because I know other people are waiting in line. But I just wanted to say that each year this city increases the police budget. Last year it was increased to $124 million, and this year it was increased to $130 million. Yet our communities are no safer, as a lot of people here have already expressed how crime has increased within downtown and other areas in the city of Raleigh. In addition to that, the police chief also expressed how crime has increased from last year until this year. So my question to the city council members here is, instead of using our tax dollars to increase policing or add additional security to downtown, is it possible to look into other creative and thoughtful measures or resources that will actually be beneficial to our community members? Whether we are considering adding more social workers downtown, increasing lights, cameras, adding a safety center or a resource booth, something that's accessible to community members so that they can actually receive and get what they need. I share the same sentiments as the young lady who spoke before me, as far as the city addressing the actual problems that are occurring in our city, getting to the root causes of the issues instead of putting a Band-Aid on the situation with the increased presence of policing. It'll be more beneficial for us to address the actual issues that people are experiencing. Refund Raleigh has also expressed an interest in making Acorns more effective. I feel like adding more resources into things that actually address the needs of folks, whether it's a mental health crisis or other social challenges that people are experiencing, our communities could better thrive from those things. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Tom Simon. I've lived in District C for 14 years along Worth Street. It has definitely gotten worse over a handful of years. Two very brief things. One, listening to entrepreneurs, as an entrepreneur myself, the pain that they're expressing is very real. And you're also talking about very narrow margins in places, so looking for them to subsidize this and help that is difficult to stomach, and I hope that people can appreciate that as they move forward and maybe look at subsidies of their programs. I've also been around some of these calls recently. I've made some of these calls. I will attest to the fact that it is all day. It is not all night. 2 weeks ago, walking through City Market, I had a knife pulled. I walk around downtown all the time. So it's not just the evening. It's not always just the bus station either. I'm also a member of the Community Engagement Board. So I know the committee work that you guys do. We're trying to work on stuff too. Maybe there's ways that we can work together collectively. At the end of the day, the idea here is look for the solution to the problem. We understand what it is. I appreciate the police efforts. We have had instances where they've said, talk to your counselors, talk to your chief, talk to your mayor. And I understand their frustration. But ultimately, we all want to find a better solution, so I don't also have people telling me, I can't come see you anymore, this is just too rough. So I appreciate your time, appreciate you thinking about it, and look forward to the solutions that come.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Baldwin and City Councilors, for your public service and the opportunity to speak with you. I'm Michael Lindsay, and I'm the president of the Forest Park Neighborhood Association. Our neighborhood is to the west of the Glenwood South Entertainment District. Since the winding down of the pandemic and the opening up of Raleigh, our neighborhood has experienced a dramatic increase in the spillover effects from Glenwood South. We've had quite a few incidents of criminal behavior this past year that seem to be most frequent after midnight and through the 2 a.m. closing time of bars. These incidents have ranged from property crimes to gunshots. Stupid vandalism is one thing, gunshots is another. I've lived in our neighborhood since 1984, and I can't recall a year when our neighborhood experienced 3 gunshot incidents, and the year isn't over yet. I'm pretty sure most years we had no gunshot incidents. The year started off with shots heard on Woodburn Road, then West Johnson Street, recently somewhere near St. Mary's. Until last week, I didn't know about a 4th gunshot incident. And gunshot isn't really the right word. Shooting's more accurate. I was talking with neighbors last week, and they told me that they were sitting on their porch on a Thursday night at 9:15 when a car came by. It did a U-turn and started going down a one-way street the wrong direction. A window came down and a gun was fired. It hit our neighbor in the back. Fortunately, it was probably a BB gun or a pellet gun, and it might have ricocheted off of some of the metal support on his chair. They did tell the police about this, and the police were there very quick. Thank you, Chief. It was considered an active shooting situation. Now I want to tell you about another incident that was not reported to the police, and that's my concern about the statistics. Last Thursday, a neighbor told me they went to tell someone that they were parking in a no parking zone and could get a ticket for $200. You'd think they were doing them a favor. The car driver's response was to get out of his car, push the neighbor, and verbally assault her. Obviously a crime, but she was afraid to report it. I'm bringing these cases up not to create a sense of fear, but rather to better understand what's going on right now. And I appreciate what the police department's doing. I appreciate what you guys are doing. We're all in this together, and I want to focus on solutions. But today I just wanted to talk about the perception of what we're seeing in our neighborhood. And quantitative numbers are one thing, and then qualitative are another. And the quality of the crimes we're experiencing has really taken off. So thank you.
Thank you. We have about 2 more minutes left.
I'll be-
We have a 1:30 meeting in here, which we have to prepare for, so.
I'll be very quick. I'm Ron Aycock. I live in the same neighborhood Mike just spoke about. I live on the corner of Park and St. Mary's. We get the brunt of the washover effect of the Glenwood South. We appreciate the problems of businesses are having, and we would like to see solutions to that. But our problem is the washover effect into our neighborhood, the vandalism, the gunshots, and we're impressed with the efforts of the police department. We encourage the council to consider giving more resources to that. Perhaps there could be some discussion about security cameras on the edge of the neighborhood, maybe some parked police vehicles just to sort of scare the people away, and maybe periodic patrols into the edges of our neighborhoods at different times on the weekends to discourage. And maybe better secured signs. Our signs, the new parking that you authorize, people don't like it, so they pull up the signs and the stop signs. We need some cement or some way to secure those signs, not only so they'll be effective, but also they take those around, they themselves can be dangerous weapons. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
This won't be long. Marianne, I'm addressing these comments to you. This is under your watch. This is your failed leadership. What do you think happens when you destroy all the affordable housing and the homelessness increases over 100%. This has all happened under your watch with your pro-development, no asking of any public benefits from any of your developer friends. And this is what happens. Do you think that we're going to just be able to have all of these unhoused people and not have any consequences for it? This is your responsibility, and I hope you do not run again.
We're talking about kindness today. Yeah. Listen, I wanted to. I just wanted to say, I wanted to thank everybody who showed up and shared your stories. This is, yeah, we are dealing with a lot right now, and sharing those stories. I know I've talked to some of you, and worrying about your employees, worrying about people who are in your neighborhood is a great concern. If we don't have safety, then we don't have anything, and that has to be our number one priority. We're running short on time. I'm going to ask council members, do you want to keep this in committee? And we can follow up at a later date? You good with that? Okay. So we will hold this in committee. I'm sure we'll get additional updates. And then I am going to ask if Bill King could maybe follow up with some of the business owners. I would like to get a meeting together with the business owners and maybe inform them about some of the things we are doing, but also get feedback on additional solutions and getting more specific. I think that would be helpful. Okay. Well, downtown residents, yes, that goes along with it. And that will be good. Okay.
Mr. Raleigh, do you need direction from us
Yeah,
on
I
what
was
to bring
actually
back?
just going to ask what, from a staff perspective, to make sure that we're prepared coming forward, what, if there's specific ask. I think I heard the mayor articulate one, but there are others.
RTN needs to reset so we can.
Okay.
We're
well,
just
maybe we
holding
talk
this
about-
in committee. We've
Okay.
asked for follow-up with DRA and
Okay.
the businesses and residents, holding a specific meeting, solutions-oriented, and we will hold this in committee and we'll determine
Okay.
next steps. Thank you. All right, meeting is
Meet
adjourned.
next month.